In a world where alcohol is the only drug that people will question you for not using, we encourage you to rethink the drink. Welcome to the Boozemusings community. Today I'm talking with Clare, one of the founding members of our online community, Rethink the Drink. Clare and I have been talking online for almost 5 years, since meeting on the Australian website Hello Sunday Morning, where we were both trying to stop drinking. Clare and I had a very different sort of start. We're both almost 5 years sober at this point, but Clare really struggled for the first few months. So today I want to talk to Clare about how you stop drinking when you don't really want to, but you feel like you have to, but you don't really want to, and you're not quite sure how you can handle the stress of life without alcohol. How do you stop drinking when you don't feel like you can, when everyone else in your community, whether it's an online community like Hello Sunday Morning and Rethink the Drink, or whether it's a live community like Alcoholics Anonymous or Smart Recovery, where everybody else seems to be gaining traction and you're the one who keeps relapsing or thinking once again, maybe I can moderate. How do you wrap around actually getting to the point where you do stop and start gaining?
It actually took me probably 4 months to get to that point. The fear that went around that and the continual feeling that I might not be able to do this, but I have to do it. There's no way out of this. You know, I kind of had to turn that on my head and make it a driver to keep me coming back to trying, which is a big ask when you're in that space. That takes a lot of work to do. The things I was talking about and the honesty I was communicating to the online community was not something that I could have done face to face. I couldn't have told my family. I found the idea of Alcoholics Anonymous wasn't for me. I made a commitment to myself to ask for help from the online community, and this is really important. When I asked for that help, I would put as much effort in as possible to when somebody suggested an idea, an approach to me to sort of, get day 4 or something. I would really look at that with an open mind. So even if I thought, oh my God, no, I remember somebody said to me once, just sit with a craving. I just thought, oh my God, how the hell can you sit with a craving? Because my cravings were such that sometimes I even think I bought booze before I had the craving. For me to sit with that was incredibly uncomfortable. But I'd asked for help. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try it. I trust these people. They've been through this, so I'm going to give it a go. What do you know? It actually worked.
Well, and you were brilliant because you took that. You took the idea of sitting with the craving, which somebody gave you because you were struggling and you kept caving into these cravings and going back to day one, and it was so frustrating. And you took that advice and you tried it, and then you came up with looking at the cravings with curiosity, and that's something that you wrote about in many of your posts. And even though you're not in there in Boom with us right now talking to people, those posts keep coming back, and oftentimes people will say, oh, that's fantastic, look at the craving with curiosity, that makes so much sense. And so you took from the community and you gave back to the community, which was brilliant.
I think we tell ourselves a lot of lies. We tell ourselves it does a lot for us. We tell ourselves that it controls us in ways that allow us to keep on drinking. We forget that we have a choice. We don't think we've got a choice. We most definitely do have a choice. When you start looking at your drinking with curiosity, so you really take an honest look and you look at the words that you're saying to yourself in your mind. You look at the sensations that your body is creating when you're in the middle of a craving, which can be pretty uncomfortable. You look at your thoughts, you look at the things you do in the home. when you look at those afresh, I can absolutely promise you, you will reduce the intensity and you will reduce the grip, because we tell ourselves it's much more intense and it's much more stronger and it's much more compelling than what it actually is. So that's one of my number one tips. It's just to say, okay, I'm going to give myself 10 minutes. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to really look at it with fresh eyes and see really what it's about. So I'm going to think before I act.
Which is an incremental approach of looking at cravings and looking at your behavior surrounding your cravings, which is similar to the kind of the incremental approach that you took to stopping drinking. You know, with you, it was a period of months where you worked on moderating and trying to just, drink on the weekends or just drink less, eventually getting to the point of 3 or 4 days sober in a row. And finally, you were able to completely stop. It was a gradual process for you. Whereas for me, it was just, rock bottom, last day one, that's it. So it's good to look at the whole picture of the incremental approach to looking at cravings and looking at getting sober, and give yourself a little bit of space to breathe in there and think.
I mean, in the early days, I really tried hard to find a way to keep on drinking. Part of the day you're in denial, part of the day you're honest. You're probably going to be more in denial with the reality of your situation. I know, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock, yes. the wine hour. So I remember a phase, you'll remember this, Wing Victory. I decided I was going to moderate. So I thought I would just get really, really hammered 3 times a week, and that would be okay.
Oh, I remember that. Yes.
So I would heavily binge to the tune of 1.5 bottles of wine just 3 times a week, and that's
3 times a week, and that makes it moderate. Yeah.
I couldn't manage to keep it to 3 times a week. No. And it wasn't until I suppose about 2 weeks after that idea, that approach had failed miserably, that it had dawned on me that getting really, really hammered 3 times a week was so far off any grown-up view of moderation. it was kind of laughable. When you take an incremental approach to drinking, you have many light bulb moments as you move through the path, and that myth that I told myself, that was a biggie, because that sort of woke me up to how much I was kidding myself and how much a grip my addiction had got on me. So yeah.
Well, there's another myth that applied to you, and that's that if you have a very high stress life, which you had, you were a single parent and you had a very high stress job. Your son, when you stopped drinking, was 6, I believe, or was he? Yeah, he was 6.
Yeah.
Mine was 11, so you stopped before I did. Good for you. You felt like you had to drink. You felt like you needed to drink to survive because you had so much stress in your life. I felt the same way, and I think that we're taught to feel that we have to drink if we have a very high stress life, that it's going to release the stress and it's going to make it possible to cope. How did you get to the point where you didn't feel like you had to drink anymore?
There's lots of things about this. When you stop drinking, and this is at odds kind of with good parenting, you absolutely have to put yourself and stopping drinking as first and foremost. So for a while, whilst you gain momentum with it and you get into a comfortable place, you kind of have to come first. So I calmed down my home life. I stopped manically rushing around cleaning up. I stopped manically rushing around taking Joseph to this that and the other. And I just started to make the home a less intense place to be. I
did exactly the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'll hear a lot of us recommend kicking back and doing Netflix. I know for some people they need to keep busy. They need to keep their mind occupied. I needed to quieten mine. Then at some point somebody mentioned meditation to me. I laughed at that concept initially because I thought, you're having a laugh, aren't you? You want me to sit quietly? I need a bottle and a half to sit quietly, and even then I don't really sit quietly. So that was huge, meditation for me, because I kind of ran on stress a lot. Now,
I did too.
When you run on stress a lot, you kind of fool your body into a physiological response where it is highly tuned to danger, and you're either fight, flight, or freeze, one of those things, which is all very useful if you've got a dinosaur after you or something like that, but it's not terribly useful when, I know, you're driving down the M4 to pick up your child from nursery.
Yeah.
So you end up with you're constantly highly strung, and that was why alcohol works so beautifully for me, because as soon as you had a slurp, you have that warmth that started at the top and spread throughout. So yeah.
But Claire, it's interesting because you said that the idea of putting yourself first was at odds with good parenting. And I know exactly what you mean by that, because for years I felt like I was a good parent because I never put myself first. Mm-hmm. And I was always running in this sort of high stress, treadmill of everything from cookie baking to running big fundraising campaigns for my daughter's school, and just going all the time, and never slowing down and putting myself first, because I was uber parent, but I was drinking a lot. Mm-hmm. And somehow we've gotten to this strange place in the world now where we see putting yourself first, meaning taking care of yourself, meaning sitting quietly and saying, I need some space, as not good parenting. But it's okay to drink a bottle of wine to wind down at night because you've been going. So it's interesting. We create this situation where we can't slow down, and then we suddenly just shut ourselves off at the end of the night with wine, and that's okay. But when you started to put yourself first and do things like learn how to meditate and sit quietly with yourself and ask your son for a little space instead of just shutting yourself down with wine at the end of the night, did you find you became a better parent?
Yeah, absolutely, and a less guilty one. So in our household, it's just Joseph and myself. Joseph's now 11, and at the time, I really did have to sort of readdress the balance, and just for a time really put me and stopping first and foremost. Joseph was at an age, and I did seek a lot of advice in the wider stop drinking community about how to talk to him about my drinking, because there were times when I had to ask him if he could please just cut me some slack, which is huge to ask a child that young, but I had to do that because at that very delicate phase I just needed to keep everything trundling along as calmly as possible. So my
kids were older. My daughter was 15 and my son was 11. And my daughter was more aware that I was drinking way too much than my son was. He wasn't consciously really aware that that was happening because he went to bed much earlier. But my daughter was becoming aware of it. And I was very straight with both of them. I said, I've been drinking too much and I want to stop. And the only way I can stop is if we don't have any unnecessary drama at night. I need to be quiet for a while. So I really need, if there's something really important that needs to be dealt with, bring it to me, please. But, no theater in the house for a little while. And they were fantastic about understanding that. And, as long as I did what I did, which is stick to it and stay sober and not go back to drinking, they felt wonderful about it because I was present. I never had that sort of spaced out, edgy, wine mom kind of feel to me anymore. I was just there and present, and it was good to be honest with them about it.
Yeah, Joseph is Joseph was aware that he was a huge driver in me stopping.
Which is so much better than a child thinking that they're the driver and you drinking, right?
Yes. So he is fully aware that he is so important to me that I would take on this battle. He's also, and this is key, he is so proud that I stopped drinking.
Yeah.
And it has shown him how you can turn stuff around if you want to, and you can turn big stuff around if you want to.
And that's the best lesson that you can teach a child.
Yeah.
That, and also the lesson of how to take care of yourself in a real way, or rather than getting blotto meditating, rather than getting blotto going for a walk in the evening, or listening to music, learning to process your emotions instead of just numbing them out. That's what really good parenting ultimately is, I think. Not jumping through hoops to impress, everybody and try to keep up, with the most high-powered parent on the street.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you went outside into the broader community of sobriety coaching, and did you work with Veronica Valley a little bit, or you talked to her about some of these issues?
So Veronica Valley is fab, as are you. I did speak to Veronica. I looked. So I was so nervous about screwing stuff up. I was so nervous about doing the wrong thing. And Veronica gave me some advice about being a parent and being a parent whilst you're stopping. And that was where the advice came to talk to Joseph in an age appropriate way. Now that takes some working out because you're scared about not being age appropriate. But you're not age appropriate when you're getting hammered all the time.
No, yeah, and we don't think of that really. You think about movies like Bad Moms, where it's just so cute that they're getting trashed all the time. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Not cute. It's not cute. And you can see it. You can see the difference in your children's eyes when you stop. You can see the difference in what they see in you, and it's just, oh my gosh, the difference is amazing. The difference in being really, truly, honestly present with them all the time and really, truly, genuinely yourself all the time. It's hard to imagine that I was ever anything but that. And I remember feeling such peace, once I got there a few weeks.
I mean, it was kind of radical at the times because you can still be a rubbish mum when you're sober. Yeah. But you don't have that. You've just had an off day. It's not because you've got a load of chemicals running through your system.
Yeah.
And so the whole guilt thing is massively, 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 hugely reduced. So life is much lighter.
Yeah. And you have no idea how much guilt is affecting your relationships until you remove it.
No.
then everything is different. It's an amazing thing.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you a very specific question. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. The primary thing that you used to stop drinking was the online community.
Yes.
You also worked with Veronica Valley. Was that in coaching, or did you just email and talk to her, or how did you?
I emailed and talked to her. So on her, she has
a book. Which book was that?
I had a book. I can't remember what it was called now. It was a course that Veronica has. I didn't actually work my way through so much of that course. Gosh, it's a long time now. But I do remember that it challenged a lot of my assumptions about my drinking and how I had to live my life.
Yeah.
So, yes. And I think this is one of the things where we say sort of immerse yourself in stopping. So I was a voracious reader of anything from kind of almost like the chick litty. They weren't really chick lit because they're actually very clever. But the books like Mrs. D is Going Out. So
yes, that was a book that you really liked. Mrs. D is Going Without. Yeah.
It's kind of written as an easy to read novel.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found was it kind of sped up the process of getting my head around everything.
Yeah.
So by reading her stuff, I would recognise myself as well as being provided with really helpful solutions to problems that I was experiencing. And then also I read the more, I guess, the sort of like psycho-scientific approach stuff. So books like Mark Lewis's Biology of Desire. So I read anything that appealed, anything that turned me on about the whole thing to do with stopping drinking, attitudes, behaviours, psyche, ways of living, or the whole kit and caboodle. And I would say probably for about 18 months, I always had at least one reference that I was reading or one novel that I was reading.
For 18 months.
For 18 months, yeah.
Yeah, I think the last thing that I read, we're both 5 years sober now. And I did the same thing for the first 18 months, especially the first 6 months. I was just saturated in the Quit Lit, the biographies of addiction and recovery, and the different books about brain chemistry and that sort of thing. The last book that I read was 18 months. I picked it up on a cruise ship. It was called Chasing the Scream. And I haven't read anything since Chasing the Scream because I basically saturated myself.
Mm-hmm.
But that saturation was necessary, was absolutely essential. You also did some unique breathing techniques to help deal with stress and cravings.
Oh gosh, yes. So stress was huge for me. Resolving my sleep was huge for me. And I kind of needed to manage both of those. So yeah, I used the 4-7-8 breathing technique.
How does it work, the 4-7-8 breathing?
What it basically does, so as I said before, when we get ourselves into a stressful situation, our physiology means that we react in a fight, flight or freeze response. So our body is literally tingling with adrenaline to enable us to run away or to be still or whatever. 4-7-8 breathing kind of falls your mind and your body out of that highly tuned situation. So it literally calms everything down. So when you're stressed, your breathing will become more shallow, become quicker, and 4-7-8 breathing brings it back to normal. Now, the amazing thing about this is when you have, for me anyway, when you have an alcohol addiction, you can go from normal to I've got to buy it in pretty much a heartbeat. I'd say, I know, 10 seconds or something. It was for me. 4-7-8 breathing can bring you back to yourself within 30 seconds.
Wow.
Okay, it is that effective.
Well, that's fantastic. Can you tell me how to do it? I mean, we can look up a link.
Yeah. It's so simple. You literally breathe in slowly for a count of 4. So 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. You gently hold your breath for a count of 7. So again, 1,000, 2,000 to 7,000. And then you slowly release the breath to a count of 8. And you do that, I think it's a maximum of 4 times.
Okay.
By the time you've done it once, like I said, you will see the result.
And it relaxes you?
It relaxes you, and it brings you down, and it buys you time to think about what's going on and why.
Because you also talked about, that's like if we had somebody in the community last night who's in their first week. She was doing really well, and for some reason she found herself in a bar. I think that she actually works in a pub, and this craving just hit her like, a rock. And she posted, which was great. So she immediately got lots of support, and she left, and she was okay. But, she had that kind of craving you were just talking about, where, it hits you like a ton of bricks.
Mm-hmm.
So that technique works really well for that kind of experience. But then the other kind of cravings in early sobriety, I don't have them anymore, and I can imagine you don't have them anymore either. But in the first few weeks, first few months, sometimes you can go through a craving that lasts for a few hours. It feels like the whole night you feel like you just don't know how you're going to get through the night without drinking, because you're so used to drinking to get through the night. And I remember reading a post that you had written once about riding the wave with that.
Yeah. Now that there's a number of practical interventions that you can take to ease that. The first one is for me was to have a good meal. So I started having a decent meal about 30 minutes an hour before I knew my craving was going to hit. So my cravings would hit 4:30.
Yes. I did that too. I started eating my dinner at 4:00 in the afternoon.
Now, if you have a full tummy, or certainly a tummy that's not empty, you will dampen down those cravings significantly.
Yeah.
Just think, I mean, when I used to go out socializing a lot, I would never eat before I went out drinking, because I wanted that spark and that fire that came from, I guess, all the sugar and the alcohol on a hungry body. It kind of ramped everything up. So there's a number of interventions. So my interventions on a daily basis were to eat around about, certainly by 4:00. I would play soothing music in my car to kind of bring me down to a calmer level. I used to worry a lot about driving home and being on time for my child, so I was trying to make my drive home a calmer thing, as opposed to, I don't know, being bloody mad. And also the 4-7-8 breathing. Now there's other things that are super useful to do if that time of day, the commute time, is tricky. And that's to change your route home. Now, I couldn't do that, because if I changed my route home, I would have made my journey longer, and the length of my journey was a key trigger. But sort of taking a different route home, walking a different way, so you don't go past those flipping shops that you buy the booze from.
Yeah.
And
it's not on your path.
Yeah, the shops that I bought booze from were many and varied, because I kind of had to share the love between them, because it was too the amount of booze that I was buying. So I had.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. No, I can't go there today because I went there yesterday and the day before, so I have to go, and that would make me even more manic.
Exactly. Yes, it does. It makes you manic, and you're finding that you have to have this thing to calm down because you've had a stressful day, but getting the thing makes you more manic than you already were. And if you just slow down and breathe, you don't need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about buying yourself time to sort of think, have I kidded myself into this craving? And to a degree, you would have kidded yourself into this craving. Not completely though. And this is this was at another key stage where I asked for help from the online community, and somebody put something to me, and I thought, oh my God, that's going to be so difficult for me to do. I told them at that stage, I think I was getting to something like day 3, and I was really, really, really hugely struggling to get to day. It might have been day 5. I can't remember now. And somebody offered the suggestion to me and say, oh, okay, Claire, you're telling us that you're going home and you're buying booze. What about this to kind of try and disrupt this pattern? Why don't you come home, log on, and put a post out there saying that you're planning on drinking. You're worried about it, but that's what you're doing. You're planning on drinking. You're going to drink, and you're just putting that out there. And then wait 20 minutes and see if somebody responds to that post. Now, I'm sort of underneath it all, really decent person, and
you are such a decent person, I know.
I had a responsibility to myself to stop drinking. I had a responsibility to my son to stop drinking. I also felt very strongly that I had a responsibility to my fellow HSMers not to waste their time. Yeah. Somebody had thought about what I was trying to articulate, and they had offered a solution. But for me, I had to give that a go. In reality, it kind of stopped me having that plan, because I didn't like to say, look, I'm going to do this. So I think what's happening, the pendulum was starting to swing more than what I thought, more than what I realised at the time, into becoming a not drinking person.
And it really helps to have a community that's responsible to you, and you're responsible back to the community. That makes such a huge difference.
Absolutely massive.
Certainly did for me. Yeah, massive. That the last time that I was really, really in danger of drinking, I think it was my day 11. So that would have been March 17th, 2015. But if I had cracked on that day, I would not be 5 years sober now. I would probably still be trying to figure out how to stop drinking. And the reason that I didn't crack on that day was because of that community. I felt like if I break, I might take somebody down with me. And that kept me from underestimating what it would mean to go out and buy that bottle of wine I was certain I needed. So speaking of needing, you are now almost 5 years sober. You'll be 5 years sober in June. And everything that you felt like you had to drink because of 5 years ago, you're still a single parent, and you are now once again in a very stressful job with a long commute.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that you ever crave alcohol, or is it gone?
It's gone.
Wonderful.
It's gone. So it does go. It takes effort, and when you start to read things like the biology of desire and things like
Such a great book.
neuroplasticity, you can see how you can develop a new way of thinking and being. I guess maybe I get a thought. I don't know. I can't, for somebody who was, I thought about it all day, every day. This is just weird. I do get thoughts, but they're very, very mild and they're easily battered away. It's sort of like, why the heck are you doing that to me, head? Don't think that. It's a rubbish way to think. So yes, it's my cravings used to be painful. I have no pain in that arena now. And it was, I didn't take any medication or any interventions that way. It was all to do with changing my attitude from something that I thought I was compelled to do to I took back control.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I feel like, well, I think I read this on the blog Unpickled, which was like Veronica Valley was something that really helped you. Unpickled was something that really helped me when I was in my first weeks. Sobriety offers everything that alcohol promised, and
yes,
that is absolutely true. I feel so much less stressed now. I'm a much better parent, and I'm just so much happier. I'm happy to be alive. It feels great.
I think that the stress combined with the alcohol and of course the smoking and all that sort of stuff, and way back in the midst of time I was a dope head as well. It was such a strain to carry. It was really hard work.
It was, yeah, hard work.
Hard
to deal with toxicity.
Yeah. And so I still have the same stresses, but they don't get a grip on me because I haven't got that much poison in my system to taint the way I'm thinking. So the paranoia has gone. So yeah, you become a better, bigger, more well-developed person.
Well, it's been wonderful talking to you, Claire.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
And I look forward to seeing you online and in person again soon.